When the railways began to spread more than 200 years ago, their impact on architecture was nothing short of revolutionary. To serve these marvellous machines, whole new kinds of buildings sprang up. From the outlandishly ornate,
The things you find on buildings.
to hidden gems,
I never thought I'd get to see this.
and railway wonders of the world.
Now, this is what I call extreme train spotting.
Now, with privileged access
We are swinging.
Oh, my goodness.
and rarely seen designs,
Oh, this is the famous watercolour.
I want to show you how each and every one of these remarkable structures tells the story of how the railways have changed the way we live
You're standing in the middle of history.
forever. Today, the redevelopment of one of London's oldest railway stations. Built high above the streets upon a mighty viaduct and now dramatically redesigned.
You've taken out a big chunk of the viaduct and you've built a completely new station underneath it.
In North Yorkshire, we'll discover a spectacular railway structure over the water with plenty of drama.
There was a tremendous crash and the centre pier and the arches all fell into the river.
And in the shadow of a great station, I'll go up against the clock.
You happy with it, are you? Well, I'm happy with it. Are you happy with it?
Join me as I discover the architecture the railways built. Viaducts are wonderful structures. They're among some of the most extraordinary examples of railway engineering. So often, they take the railways in new, challenging directions. But buried in the heart of London is a viaduct that might easily go unnoticed. This is London Bridge Station, a railway giant. 3 train companies currently run from its canopied platforms on tracks laid over a great 19th century viaduct. It's also the oldest railway terminus in central London, steeped in almost 200 years of history. But until pretty recently, the station was really rather grim. I know that because it's right on my doorstep.
London Bridge is probably the railway station I know the very best. I come here practically every day because it's my local station. Now, it used to be something of a Frankenstein's monster of a station until a rather fabulous refurbishment was completed in 2018, and I can't wait to show you around.
Today's London Bridge is fantastically bright, airy, and about as tranquil as a really busy railway station can be. But to truly appreciate just how wonderful things look today, it's helpful to know just what a mess London Bridge used to be. And I don't have to think hard to recall the cramped bridges, crowded platforms, and confusing layout. In fact, London Bridge was a puzzle almost as soon as it opened in 1836. Originally, it was built as 2 stations. One a terminus, the other for through traffic serving the north of the river. In the 1920s, its signal boxes were rather challenging places to work. And in the 1970s, the poet laureate and great railway champion Sir John Betjeman called London Bridge the most complicated, muddled and unwelcoming of all London termini. I'm rather keen to find out how that old station became this spectacular new one. So I'm meeting one of the lead architects on the project, Stuart Grahn.
Stuart, this space is absolutely vast. I mean, how big is this concourse?
So it's about 70 metres wide and about 175 metres long. So it's bigger than the pitch at Wembley Stadium.
If I think back, though, what was here before was lots of railway viaducts and brick walls. How did you carve that out?
Yeah, so this space was full of Victorian arches, like you say, all sort of gnarled and knotted together. We had to carve out the space here to create a concourse big enough for the future capacity of the station.
So is that what it's all about then? Just passenger capacity improvements?
First and foremost, it is about capacity. It's about getting that space that's big enough for the future resilience of the railway. But actually, it's much more than that. And in here, I think what we're creating is something like an urban living room, a civic space which people can enjoy, and also creates a link, a connection between the north side and the south side of this particular area of London.
This dramatic revamp, almost doubling the passenger capacity of the station, took 5 years. It demanded a budget of almost £1 billion and some imaginative thinking.
I've just realised what you've done here is you've taken out a big chunk of the viaduct and you've built a completely new station underneath it that wasn't there before.
Absolutely. So the challenge was to kind of make this space feel light and airy but have a railway above it. And the idea was that we brought the roof up arched so that it allowed natural light to come down into the space below and allow passengers to travel up to the platforms.
To take in the roof and the work that's been done here, we're heading up to those platforms, which looked like this when I first knew them, before the massive redevelopment project made its mark.
This station is radically different, isn't it, to what you'd have seen 10 years ago up here?
Oh, it's completely different. It's much easier to use. There's much more platform space, and yeah, it's unrecognisable.
These canopies are fabulous.
They're all made of individual cassettes, roof cassettes, that were 3 metres wide, that we dropped in prefabricated, and then we dropped them in on site, say overnight when the trains aren't running, and zip them up to create an overall roof together.
So you've created this wonderful unifying structure that now brings the whole station together.
That's right. We've stitched together all of the cassettes that are in the roof to create this undulating form, the full length of all of the platforms, which brings the two stations together and unifies it as one for the first time in its history.
The gracefully curving roofs are awe-inspiring, especially when you consider that all the time they were being built, trains and passengers were streaming through this frantically busy station.
I think that was the major challenge of the project, was to keep the station operating and running and live whilst we were constructing it. That was a huge, huge challenge. It was a bit like doing open heart surgery while the patient's jogging.
I don't envy you at all, but the end result is glorious.
I think today's London Bridge, uniting the station as never before, is a masterpiece of contemporary design and engineering. Yet, significant features of the Victorian past have been retained. I'm finding out more about how that was done from an architect involved in the conservation work, Elise Howell-Price.
Now tell me about this whole structure here, because I can see there's some vaulting going along, and there's elements of this that are really rather beautiful.
There are, especially those quadripartite arches over there.
Quadripartite arches. What does that mean?
So basically it means an arch that's spanning in 4 directions. So normally arches and vaults span in 2 directions, but this one, because of the uneven ground and uneven forces sometimes of trains going across, it's a stronger structural solution.
So on first glance, it looks like it's uniform the whole way through. But then actually you can spot some are in concrete and some are brick.
Exactly. The ones in brick are the old ones and the original ones from the station. The ones in concrete that are here, they're new and they're a reinterpretation of the old ones.
Why the change from brick to concrete?
Well, to be honest, we don't have the skills to be able to build arches like that anymore.
I had no idea. That's extraordinary.
It is. We had to reinterpret them in a modern way that would then allow for the type program of the station being delivered and also all the functions that they need to do now that are a little bit different to what they had to do back then.
What are these sort of covers around the base of the columns for?
Well, they do actually quite a lot. It's not just the pretty packaging around the base. They provide acoustic absorption, because otherwise this space would be really loud. They also hide lots of the services below, electricity, even water and drainage in some instances. So they do a lot to keep this space really clear and clutter-free.
For me, all the imaginative work means that this is a truly pleasant space to pass through. The architects were determined to create a station that was a destination in its own right. So this historic railway space has become a kind of village here in central London, much more than just the familiar line-up of station shops.
As a local resident, I find this really quite useful, but it's actually something for everyone.
It's really useful, but there's something really poetic about how this space is being used and given back to shops, because originally it would have been all storage for goods anyway.
So the history of London Bridge Station lives on in its spectacular 21st century incarnation. However, I suspect the architectural impact of this station is felt well beyond the concourse. And that more secrets lie behind this scaffolding under the viaduct that's so important in this station's story. I'm exploring London Bridge Station and the railway buildings around it. Because for almost 200 years, the station has absolutely shaped this part of South London. Markets and pubs live under the railway tracks. And beneath the viaduct upon which the station was built, these arches, now covered by scaffolding, were once prime real estate. I first knew this location as home to a handy local off-licence. But I've heard that a long time ago, it was a base for a once great company. One which gave its name to this part of London, still known as Findlater's Corner. The structure was once a magnificent local landmark, and to me, it's tragic that it fell into such decay. But now, restoration is underway, and I'm thrilled to have special access to the work being led by architect Benny O'Looney. The facade is being cleaned and repaired, returning this building to its rightful place in South London life. So I'm desperate to see what he's been up to.
Look at this. I mean, the things you find on buildings. This is absolutely exquisite. Benny, I've got 1,000 things I want to ask you because I thought I knew this building. I've come past this corner 1,000 times before over the years, and yet I've never seen it up close or looking anything like this.
Well, welcome to Findlater's Corner. It's got quite a story, and what we're seeing here is a fabulous frontage for a wine shop. Since this railway viaduct was built by the South Eastern Railway in 1865, there's been a wine shop here. And so we've got this Baroque revival facade here for these whiskey and spirit merchants, Findlaters, using this wonder material of the Edwardian era, Dalton's Carrara ware, which was made just a mile upstream at the Dalton's Pottery Works on the Albert Embankment. And because of it's been twice fired, the detail is as if it was made yesterday. And it's just perfect for a sooty city. The rain would wash the soot off it. It's got this hard glaze on it. And so it's going to be luminous when the scaffold comes down.
I mean, I can't stop touching it. I genuinely, I have to say, I'm a little emotional seeing this up close because I've seen this ruined for so many years, and it's back.
Seeing this loving restoration at first hand is truly moving, and Benny has lots more to show me. Starting with a fascinating clash of architectural styles as the railways carried on building.
So this is where we see the 1860s stucco Italianate architecture crashes into this Dalton's Carrara ware. So the quite busy high Victorian Italianate here, this wonderful flourish of Victorian terracotta work, and then in 1900, this bold new facade slams into it, and we think it's a part of reorganizing the tracks perhaps above and probably rebuilding the bridge over Borough High Street.
Now get this right, this is the railway company building this facade and building on the outside to sell the space to rent to other people, saying this is amazing, this is wonderful, come and buy stuff here.
Well, they always knew it was a prominent site. We've got the east end of Southwark Cathedral right across the street. So you couldn't have a more high-powered site in the architecture of Southwark. And so the railway companies really rose to the challenge.
So could this whole frontage now be restored as the railway company designed it back in the day?
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do, to see this Victorian architecture restored in the context of the big Victorian buildings across the street.
Do you know, I came down here and I first moved to this area before it all closed down and before it fell into rack and ruin. And I had no idea it was this ornate. I mean, this must have been one of really London's most prominent ruined buildings.
Quite.
I'm blown away by this. a scene that I really care about and a building I've loved coming back to life is yeah.
As if that experience weren't enough, Benny has yet more to show in an arch alongside the Findlaters building. With the train tracks overhead and the bells of Southwark Cathedral ringing around us, this is a chance to see some remarkable commercial art. Art which also points to great social change more than a century ago.
The most recent thing that we found here is this fabulous glass mosaic, enlivened by this fantastic gilt tesserae, which we're pretty sure comes from Venice.
You so often see these mosaics on the floors for advertising, but so rare on a wall.
We're so excited to find it. It tells us that there was a tea room in here, and Express Dairy, along with Joe Lyons and ABC, were the great tea rooms of London in the early 20th century. And we had a ladies' room, afternoon teas, luncheons, quite rich offer for people using London Bridge Station. And I think the fact that there was a ladies' room here is important, because in late Victorian Edwardian London, unchaperoned ladies had a hard time finding a place to get a meal. They couldn't go to a bar or a chop house. But these new tea rooms offered a kind of welcoming, a safe place for women to come and meet. And here, at the threshold of one of London's greatest railway stations.
This is beautiful in both its design and what it means as a part of social history, and recognising the struggle that women have had to have independence and being recognised. I mean, this is such a privilege for me to see a piece of social, advertising, railway, industrial, commercial history on my doorstep, being revealed for the first time in generations.
Well, this has been a dark, difficult underside of a railway bridge, so having this illuminated can really bring this part of the street to life again.
I can't wait. I really can't wait.
In the cramped space beneath the railway bridge, a forgotten story of a great London landmark really is coming back to life. Now, Benny wants to take me even higher above the streets of South London, on a level with the viaduct. And with rising anticipation and a few nerves, I'm following Benny up another ladder.
Okay, I wasn't prepared for this. Look. This is a full-size stag's head. Can I touch this?
Yeah.
This is extraordinary. What is a stag's head and all of this fruit and pineapples? Oh, look, there's an artichoke here. What's going on?
We think the stag's head tells a little bit of story about Findlater's Mackie Todd, the wine and spirits merchant, because this is the very emblem of the Highlands. We think it might take its cue from that famous painting, The Monarch of the Glen, which was a great sort of famous thing in the Victorian period by Landseer. And it symbolizes the Highlands, the whiskey industry, and so a perfect motif framed in this fabulous arch.
This is extraordinary. It is. And this here, sorry, we haven't talked about this, which is where the clock was.
Of course. We can see the frame of the clock. The clock's being restored by the great Gillett and Johnson, the famous South London clock restorers. And we've got new hands that are big like the original hands that will really announce the time right from the far end of London Bridge.
Because that's the point. These public clocks are there to give the information so freely to the passengers. These people didn't have wristwatches at the time. They'd be coming over here, and here's the clock saying, "You're late for your train, hurry up." And this fellow here is now looking straight down London Bridge. And I saw him for all those years looking tired and rather sad. But everyone now will see this thing looking glorious again.
Well, he's definitely looking more happy now. He's enjoying that fabulous view, and that'll be complemented by the restored clock face below.
Now I get to enjoy a fabulous view myself, taking in London Bridge Station and the trains heading in and out over the viaduct.
Right on cue, my favourite tender is the Pride train coming fast. That is my... Oh, now that's just made the moment. That's just made my day. And honestly, you've got no idea how touched I am to be up here on this building that is I thought was lost, and you brought it back and you saved it, and that is beautiful.
It has been such a memorable experience to look out from the roof of this extraordinary building as it's restored to vibrant life. But maybe my time under the arches at Findlater's Corner hasn't quite run out. On my quest to experience Britain's most absorbing railway architecture, I've left South London behind and travelled north to the wonderful National Railway Museum here in York. But a part of South London has arrived before me. Because this signal box once stood just a few hundred metres from the platforms at London Bridge, at Borough Market Junction, a vital nerve centre in the capital's railway network. When the junction was remodelled in the 1970s, the box came here to the museum. Visitors aren't normally allowed inside, but today I'm a lucky exception.
Oh, this is terrific.
My guide is good friend and curator Bob Gwynn.
Bob, what a wonderful building.
This was the busiest signal box in Britain at one time. The two men working the shift here would signal up to 100 trains in an hour.
100 trains in an hour? So where are they going off to? Because if I think about it right now, surely it's just that end of London Bridge. It's just going off to what? Charing Cross? Is that all?
Well, it was Charing Cross, Cannon Street, London Bridge, and the triangle between them. Because these days, that junction effectively is east of London Bridge. But when this signal box was there, they were dealing with all those connections.
In addition to its history handling record numbers of trains, this signal box has another claim to fame. It was one of the first pieces in the National Railway Museum's collection.
When they finished with this box in 1976, the museum at that time thought, well, we really ought to have it. So basically, they arranged for the railways to dismantle it, and they lifted the frame out, and they brought it lock, stock and barrel up here and then rebuilt it here.
And that rebuilding was completely authentic, down to the last details of life for a 1970s signalman.
When they moved it, they also moved the loo, and they put the loo back in the right position. But also with the loo, they brought with it the little clip that's got torn up pieces of newspaper, which was used as loo paper back in the 1970s, and that's in the loo as well.
Any chance we could get our hands on the levers?
Well, if you're going to do that, conservation, we've got to put these nice blue gloves on.
Very sensibly so. Well, can we have a closer look at what some of these do?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
There's 35 labels along here.
Yeah.
And each of these has got little indicators, right? So does that show me what the drivers can see outside?
Yeah, the red, yellow, green is the signals, and then the white is the points. So the down person, the people coming from London and out to the country, worked here, and the up person worked the other side of there. So they just worked together all the time. And they also had train describers, so they could basically pass the train on to the next signal box by pressing a button. So the whole of it, in railway terms, was quite automatic, really, apart from the chap having to make sure he followed the timetable and play this like a piano, really.
What a lovely thought, signallers as piano players. Because that's what this is like. And the timetable is their music, isn't it? And they're responding to those notes being thrown at them, I suppose. But there's an unspoken rule, surely, an understanding between them. They have to work together.
Absolutely. They have to work as a team. They have to look after each other. And presumably, if one of them went to the loo, he'd have to say to his mate, you know, can you just keep at it whilst I go to the loo? Which would mean this person would be running up and down this thing,
Yeah.
making sure it all kept going. And that was just a normal part of it. You were effectively on the first floor, but it was worse than that because, of course, you were on a viaduct as well. So you're quite high up in the air.
Because once you're up here, in that first floor, on top of your third floor viaduct, you are an island. You're isolated, like an oil rig, perhaps.
Bit like an oil rig, but in the middle of one of the busiest cities in the world. Occasionally you'd have to deal with some emergency, a signal that didn't work or something. There were some backup bells, and they've all got different tones. So you can imagine if you had to go over to that system and Southwark Cathedral was doing bells practice, it was a bit of a cacophony in here. So you had to hope that didn't happen very often.
Not on a Sunday, that's for sure. Bob, I've just spotted behind this, up on the wall, are those stretchers?
Yeah, of course, the stretchers, because, of course, you've got a manned spot next to a live railway line. And, of course, the live railway line is third rail electrified 750 volts DC. I mean, basically, if a track worker or somebody stumbles and hits that, you're going to have to carry them away. If they're very lucky, they'll go to hospital. 750 volt DC is not something you want to play with.
It's a striking reminder of just how much this signal box can tell us about life and death working on the railways.
This is a really important building, isn't it, in telling the story of how Britain's railways were run?
Yeah, let's hear it for the people who worked this box and kept all the trains running in that busy part of London.
Too right.
I'm so pleased to see this historic box has found a home far from its hectic junction in South London. It's now part of the rich railway heritage of North Yorkshire, heritage which lives not only in cities like York, but in picturesque market towns where the railways have also left an enduring mark. And here, spanning the River Nid, it takes the truly monumental form of the Knaresborough Viaduct. Built by Victorians but made to look, well, medieval, it connects Knaresborough to Harrogate. And whilst architectural critic Nicolaus Pevsner may have called it one of the most notable railway crimes in England, it has been fought over and defended for more than 150 years. Our guide around this magnificent railway structure is Chair of the North Eastern Railway Association, Neil Mackay.
Knaresborough Viaduct was completed in 1851. It's made of local stone, quarried up the road at a place called Scotton. The blocks are absolutely huge down here at the bottom level. Each span is 57 feet across, and the height of the rails above the river here is 78 feet. So all in all, this is a very impressive structure.
The viaduct was designed by Scottish engineer Thomas Granger. He was already responsible for several railway stations, bridges and tunnels across Scotland and the north of England, and this project was a huge challenge.
The viaduct had to be built at Knaresborough because the railway has to cross the gorge of the River Nid here. And you can see the difference in height between where the rails are and the river. And this is a very narrow gorge, and the land at either side is fairly flat. So the railway had to cross the river by a bridge.
Crossing that river was never going to be easy. And during construction, disaster struck in March 1848.
Less than a year after the foundation stone had been laid, there was a tremendous crash, and the centre pier and the arches all fell into the river. The stones actually dammed the river and flooded the houses here on Waterside behind me, and of course the viaduct itself was wrecked.
It was said that the noise of the crash could be heard for a whole 5 minutes, and when the lime water washed downstream, thousands of fish were killed.
Opinions differ as to why it collapsed, but you can see that the centre pier is in the river. There had been high river levels before the collapse of the bridge, and poor workmanship was also suspected. There was a legal argument as to who was responsible, and the railway company decided to appoint a new contractor to rebuild the bridge. The old contractor didn't like this, and they've tried to prevent the new contractor from accessing the site.
Reputedly, only the central span had survived the collapse. But even that had to be demolished before reconstruction could begin. and it took 3.5 years to erect the viaduct we see today.
The design of the bridge tries to follow the design of the castle further along the river here, and as a result it has turrets above the piers and it has battlements on the parapet walls. Now, I think it was the architectural critic Pevsner said that even though it's got battlements on it, that doesn't necessarily make it beautiful. I disagree with him. Knaresborough Viaduct never had to be defended by men with bows and arrows, but at least it does rather blend in a little bit better with the architecture of the castle. As a result, it's not the typical railway bridge. It really looks rather special.
Mimicking local architecture was often a good way of getting local people on board when the railway came to town. With its medieval-inspired design, perhaps this viaduct was making a subtle statement that the railways were set to become as important to Britain as its castles. And when their railway was under threat, the people of Knaresborough would fight to defend it. Welcome back to Knaresborough in North Yorkshire and the Great Victorian Viaduct, which stands over the River Nid. The first train crossed this viaduct in 1851 and pulled into Knaresborough Station. And what a station it is! It's a treat to discover it's more or less in the same state as it was when rebuilt in 1865. It followed new designs from Thomas Prosser, the very first staff architect of the North Eastern Railway. Given many of the station's buildings have listed status, it should remain this way for a long time to come.
One of the favourite architectural features here is the fact that we've come across the viaduct straight onto the signal box and the level crossing, and we swing around. We're in the station itself. There are 2 platforms with canopies. All of these buildings are listed. The other listed buildings here are the water tower, which was used to supply water to steam locomotives, and the tunnel mouth itself, which is rather attractively faced with local stone, as you can see.
I've long been a fan of this curious stone-built signal box, added slightly later as an annex to an existing row of terraced houses.
The whole site is very compact. It's almost like a model railway.
Model-sized or not, the arrival of the railway was an event that transformed the town.
Enabling coal primarily and other essentials to be brought into Knaresborough more cheaply, and also to allow Knaresborough's products to be brought to market at a cheaper price.
From the opening of this station, Knaresborough's fortunes were bound up with the railways. And the arrival of plentiful coal was a particular boost to the town's thriving linen industry. The numerous mills had always taken advantage of their riverside location for water power, but now they could expand with easy access to coal-fired steam. For a century, the viaduct and station were the beating heart of the town. But in 1963, its prosperity came under threat. Knaresborough was one of over 2,000 stations earmarked for closure under the Beeching Report. The town rallied to save its precious station.
A large number of objections were received, and they made a recommendation to the then Minister of Transport that this line should stay open because there would be genuine hardship if it had closed.
Barbara Castle was the minister in question, and thankfully she endorsed the recommendation to keep this line open.
As you can tell, I have a great deal of affection for Knaresborough Station in its lovely design, the canopies here, the whole ambience of the station, and it would have been really dreadful if it had closed, because this would probably have been either completely derelict or redeveloped. And it's wonderful that it is still in use and still serving the town.
I'm always moved when I hear of those communities who rose up to defend their railways. most of those efforts did fail. But looking at this beautiful station and towering viaduct, we can only be grateful that the people of Knaresborough succeeded. And I'm happy to say their devotion to the station doesn't end there. It is now serving the town, quite literally, from its newly refurbished station waiting room, which has become an award-winning pub run by Phil Paling.
This is the bar, which is made out of railway sleepers. They're very heavy. Obviously a granite worktop and a footrest of rail track just to keep the theme moving of the railways.
For Phil and his team, the restoration of the former waiting room was a real labour of love. What was once mouldy and damp and with panelling coming off the walls is now a celebration of the station's architectural pedigree.
Everything in here generally is something that you may find in a railway station of old, from the telephone to the signage. The wallpaper is William Morris from the Victorian period, and like any good waiting room, a fireplace that we've reinstated to keep people warm.
All extra touches designed to evoke a sense of this room's former life.
Hopefully what we've done is makes it a little bit more palatial. It's sort of got a Agatha Christie feel to it.
There's no great mystery here, though. From the restoration of the waiting room to the listing of the station, from the campaign against beaching to the fight to get the viaduct up in the first place. Knaresborough is more than just a town with railway architecture at its heart. It's got railway architecture in its heart. At first glance, viaducts might not always be the most exciting railway structures architecturally. But they are certainly impressive feats of engineering, and the spaces beneath them can offer fascinating possibilities too. And it's one of those possibilities which has drawn me back close to London Bridge Station, to Findlater's Corner. I've been granted a unique opportunity to be part of a momentous event. In all the years I've been passing this building, there was always a clock, but it was rarely working. Barry Cole and Jamie Smith are the restoration experts ensuring that today that changes. It's barely worked since the Findlater Company vacated the building in 1967. But soon there'll be a clock telling the time for countless passengers heading for trains at London Bridge. And it's quite extraordinary for me to be able to witness the work firsthand.
So, Barry, you've got a big sort of cavern of where you've got to put the thing.
Yeah.
And now you're going to mount, what, the motor to go inside it first?
It's going to go on there, yeah.
Right.
It'll go on there, then we'll put it up against the wall and screw it together.
Well, isn't it remarkable? Everything is so simple now to control a clock like that. Compared to back in the old days, you have to have a whole turret clock and you'd have to have a whole mechanism behind it.
Hopefully
and so what you're doing is now is you're going to get this into the frame.
Well, a little bit of doing it. So all we want to do is we want to pull that away from the wall and we need the ends.
All right, in the van.
In the van.
Let's go get them.
If you don't mind, Jamie, yeah, so.
So while the hands are being retrieved, lucky old Barry gets the benefits of my enthusiasm for clocks.
But this is clever, right? So this is an automatic clock that's computer controlled. It updates, you know, on the British summertime.
Oh yeah.
So this is clever stuff.
Yeah.
How do you feel about this being one of the most prominent clocks in London?
You don't really think about that aspect of it. It's the clock that you put on the wall that works. As long as it works and it's correct and it looks like, that's all you worry about.
Your work is going to impact hundreds of thousands of people every day. Think about that.
Well, I'd rather not if you don't mind.
And now we've sorted that out, it's finally time to see if the face fits.
So Jamie's going to get the other side.
Fred, you ready?
We want the 12 at the top.
Where's the 12? 12's at the top.
Make sure the 12's at the top. Does
12 on the top, yeah.
Does help.
Bring it to the next pillar.
Yeah, just move it over, mate. That's the ticket. Move it over. That's it. Put that down. Oh, it's all right on the gap. Just move it forward a bit more, Jamie. That's it, mate. Lovely. Okay.
Hang on about this
We've got to get past the old
deer face here.
the old deer base, so we drop it
it's,
down.
Benny the Stag, I think we're calling him after
Yeah,
the
good
architect.
So we pull it down here.
Right, hands clear. I would offer to lend a hand, but I really can't face it. Sorry.
Oh, not bad. Look at this. No, back a bit. Little tiny bit. Little tiny bit. No, a bit more, a little tiny bit more. There.
Right there.
And once the face is screwed into place,
That'll do nicely.
Yeah, I think so.
a crucial task is next, and Barry is bravely entrusting it to South East London's least handyman.
So it's time to put a handle now, Tim, and you're going to be the man to do it. All right? So now you've got 2 screws in the back here. You're going to lock them up.
Right.
This end has got to be facing that mark.
Okay.
Not a little bit out, not a little bit that way, or a little bit that way. It's got to be bang on the button. All right, and you'll get marks.
Oh, well, I mean, if I get this wrong, I've
I'll
got...
put it. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll put it
Oh,
on
you got
there.
it? Oh, yeah. Right.
Yeah, it's not bad. What we're going to do, we're going to put it on about there, I reckon.
You reckon?
Yeah.
God.
What do you reckon, Jamie?
I think that's off.
No, that's bang on the
That's it there. There.
You happy with it?
That's it there, yeah.
Right, go on then, mate. Look at that. Lock and load.
I mean, I'm really sorry to everyone who comes over London Bridge for the next, how many years, and it's a little bit off.
So should we concentrate on what we're doing here or what?
It's been an incredible experience to learn about the past and present of London Bridge Station, its buildings and its impact on people's lives. I've heard how the station has been reinvented whilst its past has been preserved. And I've encountered discoveries that shed light on great social progress. But there's not a great opportunity for reflection because the clock is ticking. Or at least it might be, with any luck.
Righto, Tim. Time for the minute here, mate.
All right, thank you.
Nice and easy. You want to get it flush on that front there as well. That's it.
So it's like, right
There you
on,
go, mate. Perfect.
like that.
There's that. All right.
That is lovely. Thank you so
So you're
much.
happy with the you're happy? You're happy with that, are you?
Well, I'm happy with it. Are you happy with it?
Yeah, good as gold.
I think, well, I hope, the hands on this clock are straight. But there are some things I do know for certain. This whole area around London Bridge Station has been shaped by the birth and growth of the railways, and this clock, built into the fabric of historic railway architecture, will once again enrich the life of London and Londoners, including me. Next time I get to see Coventry Station through the eyes of its architect.
I was told I didn't have to worry about money.
That was your brief.
That was my brief.
And in Scarborough, I discover the birthplace of Britain's funicular railways.